guys, what's going on? Blossom back. Welcome back to an episode of Top Drives, and welcome back to the best car for a track set for every single RQ. You guys love the, revamp facelift episode we did for Fast Circuit. Well, today we're going to be visiting Forest Road, the one that throws off just about any player. Why? Because it says that the conditions are mixed, but it is just an asphalt track set. So here's the thing. I feel like if you are a brand new player to Top Drives and you stumble upon this video, the results are going to blow your mind. But obviously if you played the game for, just a couple of months or so, I think you're going to understand that a Forest Road is a myth. It is not a mixed track set. It is basically just an asphalt dry. But anyway, let us get into it. The best cars for each RQ for the Forest Road. Now, another reason why I chose this track set is because it's not a super twisty track set, but it's not a dragger by any ride as well. It's not like a G-Force or a slalom in terms of, being super twisty, but there are a lot of turns at the beginning of Forest Road, but at the end, there's a little bit of a drag as well. So, just like the Fast Circuit, I think this one is a hybrid track set, skewed twisty, whereas a Fast Circuit, which we did in the previous episode, was a hybrid track set, skewed fast, if that makes sense. So, anyway, let's get into it. Forest Road. Now, I've made some improvements to this facelift. So now, there is an MRA counter. So you're going to know the MRA for all the winners over here. So Nissan Skyline 2000 GT, as you can see, the MRA is 26.24. And I also made some changes at the bottom over here with the previous time and the time to beat. So yeah, for example, we're moving on to the best RQ11 car now is the Alfa Romeo Spider. So you can just give yourself a quick little reference in the previous time. So the best RQ10 was the Nissan Skyline 2000 GT, which came in at a time of, a minute, 2 seconds, and, 3 centiseconds. And now the best new time is the 1 minute and 93 that the Alpha provides, and obviously the time to beat is obviously whatever the best time is. So whatever the best time is going to go under this category over here. So this is the MR50. So I hope that makes sense. We have our tune as well, and this is going to be the blueprint going on with the rest of the episode, I guess. I was going to say the rest of the series, but I might make some changes if you guys want any improvements to the layout that we're seeing over here. Anyway, best RQ12 card that we can use is the Lancia Fulvia Coupe. Now, very similar to the Fast Circuit and also the previous episode we did in the series, a lot of the lower end cars, the commons, the winners are either going to be Italian or Alfa Romeo, and we can see that here as well. So we have the Italian Lancia Fulvia being the best car for $59.96. So only just a handful of cars does the Forest Road in over a minute. The majority of the cars do 59, well, a minute and below, sub 1 minute. This one just barely at $59.96. But yeah, it's an MRA of 45.03. Previous winner was the Alfa Romeo at RQ11, and this one beats it by just about a second. Moving on to the best RQ13 is the Alfa Romeo Giulia GT 1300 Junior, and then we have the Alfa Romeo GTA 1300 Junior once again, this time at a time of 58.86, so slightly ever so beating out that RQ13 at 59.29. The new time to beat is now the 58.86. Now, moving on is the Alfa Romeo, again, Junior Z, has an MRA of 50.63, and it has a time of 58.58. It is the next king of the hill, followed by the TBR 1600M, once a Blossom Choice car, once one of the best commons in the game, I would say, but now I would still say it's good. But it isn't like the best of the best anymore. MRA is 47.66, tuned at 323. It'll be the best RQ16 that you can use for the Forest Road, coming in with a time of 58.56, just edging out that Alfa Giulia Z by about, 2 centiseconds or something like that. Very, very minute stuff. Moving on to the best RQ17, it's something new. It is the Nissan Skyline GTS 25 Type X, coming in at a time of 57.98 with an MRA of 53.47. And then RQ18 is a Datsun 240Z with a time of 57.63, and last but not least, the Mitsuoka Himiko with a time of 57.23, MRA of 53.53. Now, if you are thinking about it, you are probably absolutely right. It took a lot of mental fortitude to get all the numbers down. Think about it this way: the times and the MRA of these cars are so similar, and one mess up can basically change everything, right? MRA 5353, time 5723. I need to think about the previous time, which is 5763. A lot of numbers to go around when you play Top Drives. But anyway, here is the quick little summary, okay? If you want a little cheat sheet of all the best Forest cars that you can use if you ever stumble upon this track set, these are the cars that you're going to want to use for each respective RQ. The one with the golden circle, or the golden trim, is the best possible car within the rarity. So the Mitsuoka Himiko, if you have to use a common, The Himiko is the car that you probably want to use for the Forest Road, but if you can't use an RQ19, then feel free to use a Datsun 240Z or any of these other cars that you see here in this screen as well. Anyway, moving on to the next rarity, we're talking about the uncommons, and this is where we get to see the time to beat change a little bit, because for the common rarities, the cars just got better with the RQ, right? But this one isn't the case. So the Chevrolet XP897 GT is the best RQ20 car that you can use for the Forest Road. It has a time of 57.58, and it has an MRA of 57.54. Very, very freaking close. But here's the thing. It doesn't beat the previous time, which is still the time to beat, which is the Mitsubishi Himiko's 57.23. Which is to say that if you had 20 RQ to spend and there was a Forest Road, it's better for you not to spend all your RQ and just use an RQ19 instead, because there's no RQ20 in the game that can beat the Mitsubishi Himiko on a Forest Road. Now, moving on, we have the Mazda Kabura. Now, this one is very strong. It has an MR of 71.32. This was also the best RQ21 for the fast circuit. So in that episode, I didn't display the MRA, so now we know the MRA, 71.32, has a time of 56.26. Now this is going to be the best time for, I think, a couple of RQ. So moving on to the next one is the Ford Mustang M81. This is a time of 56.53. The previous time is the Mazda Kabura with 56.26, and that is still the time to beat. That remains the case as well moving into RQ23, although the previous time was the Ford Mustang M81 at the bottom, as you can see here, with a time of 56.53. The Mazda Kabura is still the time to beat. So you can look at all the times over here, actually. So Ford Mustang, 56.53, best of RQ22, okay, loses to the Nissan Silvia, which is the best of RQ23, with a time of 56.51. That being said, the Mazda Kabura, even though it's 2 RQ cheaper than these two cars, is still the better car to use. So that's something to keep in mind as well, because that car is 86 handling and also has 71 MRA, as we saw earlier. So again, if you have 23 RQ to use with, you got a Forest Road, instead of maxing out your RQ, feel free to use the Mazda Kabura. That's a better car for you to use. I think the Mazda Kabura is due for a little RQ upgrade. I think 21 is a little bit too low for that car, isn't it? Now, moving on to RQ24, the next king of the hill, we have the Mitsubishi Himiko with a time of 56.21, beating out the Kabura by about 10 centiseconds. No, not even 5 centiseconds, so very, very, very close. And then moving on to RQ25 with the Mazda Miata M Coupe. Now, this is something that's very interesting. This is not a super twisty track set. It is more twisty than fast, but there are a lot of Japanese winners when we look at the uncommon winners here. 56.06 is the time for the RQ25 Miata. Moving on to the RQ26 is the Mitsubishi Starion Turbo with a time of 55.64, and then we've got the Mazda RX-7. Now the Mazda RX-7 doesn't beat the Starion Turbo. As you can see, the Starion is still faster by 2 centiseconds. So again, 26. Not only does the Mitsubishi Starion Turbo, we need to remember this, not only that the Mitsubishi Starion Turbo beats the RX-7, it beats every single RQ27, because the RX-7 is the best RQ27. That's the time of the best RQ27, 55.66. And the Starion Turbo can beat the RX-7 and everything that falls behind it as well. So very impressive stuff. And then moving on is the Nissan Silvia Convertible with a time of 55.44. And then we've got the Mazda Roadster NRA with a time of 55.46, which means that the Silvia Convertible is the better car and it deserves that golden circle. So the best uncommon to use for the Forest Road, surprise, surprise, is not your tried and true Mazda Roadster NRA, where else it is going to be the Nissan Silvia Convertible that takes the cake. So if you need to use an uncommon for the Forest Road, your best bet is going to be with that RQ28 Silvia. Now, have a look at this. Almost every single car here is Japanese. Only 2 cars are not Japanese, is the Ford Mustang M81, as well as the Chevrolet XP897. Everything else, Japanese. Ain't that interesting? Okay, moving on to the rares. We're starting off the Buick Riviera Concept. Has an MRI of 65.14, has a low 0 to 60 for an RQ30, and has great handling as well, with a time of 54.49, making it the best RQ30 that you can use for the Forest Road. It also beats out all the 31s, very so slightly, but once again, it still is the winner. But the best 31 that you can use is the BMW Z4 S-Drive. It has a time of 54.76, but remember, this will still lose to the Buick Riviera, which has a time of 54.49. Moving on, the best RQ32 is the Mitsubishi Starion GS-RV with a time of 54.48, and the time to beat is still 54.49. So, sorry, 54.58, and the time to beat is still 54.49. You get what I mean? A lot of these numbers are very similar. I mean, there are 4 different numbers to keep track in this slide alone. The MOA of the Starion is 55.37. 37, it gives you a Forest Road time of 54:58. It's faster than the previous, best car, which is the BMW at 54:76, but it isn't the best car that we've seen so far, which is still the Buick Riviera at 54:49. It's a lot of numbers, but I hope this makes sense. Anyway, moving on, RQ33. We've got the Mazda Speed Roadster with a time of 54:34. This will make, at least this will sound like I'm saying 50 a lot less when we go up in ranks, and the cars, tend to have better MRA. Moving on, RQ34 is the Hyundai Prophecy. And then followed by that is the Fiat 124 Spider with an MRA of 74.59. So it's nice to see a car with a little bit more MRA take the cake over here. Also is the best car that we've seen so far with a time of 53.98. Now, moving on, the Abarth Punto Evo MRA of 6699, which I think is a pretty nice number, but it doesn't beat the RQ35 Fiat 124. What does beat the Fiat 124 is the RQ37 Cadillac ELR, your next best king of the hill, with an MRA of 66.67. It gives off a time of 53.51 on the Forest Road. Moving on is the Renault Sport Clio V6, and we have the Dodge Demon Roadster with a time of 53.43. So overall, your king of the hill, the Dodge Demon Roadster, you could most likely just skip the Sport Clio because this still loses to the ELR, so use the ELR. You can skip the Punto because that's still going to lose to the 124, so use with the 124. Then the Prophecy Roadster, you can skip the GSR, you can skip the 18 because the Buick Riviera concept is the better one. So the real things to remember when it comes to Forest Road for the rare cars will be the Buick, will be the Mazda Roadster, Prophecy, Spider, ELR, Roadster. So yeah, ELR was also the best RQ37 for the fast circuit. So although the car has gotten many nerfs, it's still showing its head somewhere, which is commendable, honestly. Okay, moving on. Super rares. We've got the Alfa Romeo Sprint 6C. This is our next best king of the hill. The time to beat is 53.26. Now, there's our first error. There are a lot of things that I need to focus on when it comes to making this video. I got the time right. It is 53.26, but I got the photo wrong. I forgot to delete the Demon Roadster's photo to put in the Alfa Sprint. But we all can say now, and obviously you can see the times, that the Sprint is the next best thing, even though I didn't change the photo over there. But the previous time was indeed the Demon Roadster at 53.43. Moving on to RQ41, we've got the Renault 5 Turbo with a time of 53.21. So very close between these two cars, 53.26, 53.21, but the Renault 5 Turbo takes the cake with an MRA score of 73.57. Moving on is the Honda Integra Type R comes next with 53.11. We've got the Renault Sport Clio V6, which was the same RQ43 winner for the fast circuit. We have the Honda Integra Type R. A little bit of a surprise to see this one here. I actually don't own this car. I own most of the winners here, but I don't own the Honda. I definitely do not own the Renault Sport Clio, but I do own the Hyundai i30N, which is the best RQ45 to use. We're going 52.31 with an MRA of 74.39. This one kind of surprised me. I didn't think that this would have an MRA of close to 75. When I look at this car and I know it's a Hyundai, I kind of just assume, oh, the MRA is probably like 56 to 60, but it's better than I expected at 74.39. Now, it doesn't matter what the tune is, 323 or 233, it will get you the same time. So, pick your poison. Moving on, RQ46 is going to be the Dodge Razor, and we have the Jaguar XJS Trans Am with an MR of 81.19. It gives off a time of 51.83, being the next best car, the best RQ47 thus far. Then we have the Infiniti G37 with a time of 51.84, and of course, last but not least, the Vauxhall VX220. Not only is it the best Super Rare that you can use, but it's the best car that we've seen so far for the Forest Road with a time of 51.48 and an MRA score of 74.29. So once again, congratulations to the Vauxhall VX220. You have won the Golden Circle. Here are all your best Super Rare cars for the Forest Road. The ones to remember would be the Vauxhall, Infiniti, Jag, Razor, i30, Integra, I think the Integra, the Renault, and then the Renault 5, because the Renault 5 beats out the Integra. I actually don't remember if there were any carryovers. I think every car remained. I think every car was a new king of the hill. If I remember correctly, every car should be every. Oh no, it wasn't, because the Jag still beat the Infiniti G37. So there you go. So that's the one thing, I guess. You don't need to use an Infiniti. Might as well just use a Jag. That will be a better option. So there you go. Okay, moving on. Now we've got the Ultra Rares again. there's a little bit of a correlation here, I guess. But the best RQ50 for the fast circuit is also the best RQ50 for the forest road. The D Tommaso Pantera SI at 233 with an MR of 72.97. It is the best car that we've seen so far, beating out the Vauxhall VX220. Now, this is honestly what I expect from an RQ50. You know, if the RQ50 can beat a 49, then that's fine. Because usually RQ50s, you look at them and you're just like, oh yeah, they're probably kind of trash or anything like that. And that's because a lot of RQ50s in top drives, they lose to 49s. But this one at least carries its weight, right? So that's always good. And then we've got the Renault Sport Magon that comes up next. It also has the same exact time as the D Tommaso Pantera, which honestly is a good thing for the D Tommaso Pantera. They're at the same time, 51.39 between both cars. Now, moving on, we have the Mazda MX-5 Cup, which is the new king of the hill, of 51.13. No MRA, 66.4. I mean, it's not no MRA, but it's low MRA. But I believe this car's going to be winning for a couple of... Oh, never mind. This is a better one. 50.94 in that Nissan 370Z with an MRA score of 73.24. Moving on, the Citroen Saxo Super 1600 at the time of 50.58. Now, I think this one remains the best up till the Suzuki Ignis. The MRA on this thing always blows me away. 91 MRA on this car. I always forget that. I just think that this is a twisty specialist, and it comes in, and it, you know, every once in a while I get reminded it has 91 MRA. I'm just like, oh wow, yeah, it actually is a little bit of a quarter-mile dragster, isn't it? Nothing more than that, but still. Yeah, we got the Nissan 370Z with a time of 50.69. It does lose to the Saxo, so unfortunately the Nissan 370Z isn't going to be useful in this track set. It is good for the hairpin road, but that's a story for another time. And then we have the Boxster RS60 as well, which still loses with a time of 50.96, still loses to the Citroen Saxo. It even loses to the Nissan 370Z that we saw prior. This is 50.96, this was 50.69, so you flip that around, right? But yeah, the Boxster, I mean, you know, base stats, not the best thing in the world, but it has a little bit more MRI, 78.79 compared to the Nissan 370's 72.14. I don't know. You tell me this. I think the Boxster RS60 should probably go down one RQ. Moving on, RQ57, there you go. New king of the hill. Suzuki Ignis with a time of 50.34. The next car to be beating out the Citroen Saxo. And then after that, we have the Alfa Giulietta TCR, MRA 90. with a time of 49.99. We're going sub 50 seconds now. Now we've got the Hyundai i30N Fastback, which still loses to the Giulietta. And then we have the Mazda BBR, which although it beats the Fastback Hyundai, it still loses to the Alfa Romeo Giulietta. So again, this has a time, the Mazda has a time of 50.16, beats out the Hyundai with a time of 50.36, but doesn't beat the RQ58 Alpha with a time of 49.99. So you see what I mean? Like, even though this is a way lower 0 to 60, I mean, this is way lower, 4.1 and 4.7. The Forest Road is a pretty interesting track set because you need handling and you need MRA. Low 0 to 60 isn't necessary because you've got cars like the Alfa Giulietta beating out the BBR, even though there's like a 0.6 second difference in their 0 to 60s. Moving on now, RQ61 Mini John Cooper Works, still, by the way, losing to the Alfa Giulietta. So the Giulietta is a great little RQ saver if you need one. But we got a new king of the hill now, the Citroen C3 Max, 49.71. Then we've got the Chevrolet Camaro SS, which has a time of 49.76, but it still loses ever so slightly to the Citroen C3 Max. Then last but not least, we got the Zenith E10, the best time here at 49.58. Now, one thing to note is that two cars at the same time, the Zenith E10 as well as the Alfa Romeo 8C Spider Concept, which is the best ultra rare RQ64, also the best ultra rare in general for the fast circuit, right? So 8C, pretty damn good. Zenith E10, they both share at the same time of 49.58. So again, here's your little cheat sheet. Golden circle goes to the Zenith E10 being the best ultra rare for the Forest Road, but some other cars to take note of besides the Zenith E10 is going to be the Citroen C3 Max, the Alfa Romeo Giulietta TCR, which beats the Fastback, the BBR, and the John Cooper Works, and every other 61, 60, 59, and everything that came before that. Some other cars to take note of would be the Suzuki Ignis, Citroen Saxo, Nissan 370, MX-5, and the D Tommaso Pantera. So those are going to be your Forest Road winners for the Ultra category. Now, moving on to the Epics. We start off again with the same best winner For the fast circuit, if you guys remember from the previous episode in the series, the best RQ65 was the Lantis, and again, it is a Lantis for the Forest Road, has an MRA of 94.44 and gives off a time of 49.33, beating out the two previous winners in the Zenith and the Alpha 8C, so this thing deserves RQ65 if you ask me. The best RQ66 goes to the Volvo 850, and then we have the Peugeot 308 Racing Cup. The 308 Racing Cup loses to the Volvo by just 2 centiseconds, as you can see, 49.16 compared to the Volvo's 49.14. And that's because the Volvo has more MRA. The Volvo, 88.24 MRA, compared to the Peugeot 308, 76.05. So, yeah, you tell me, man. It's a little bit of a MRA track set, isn't it, the Forest Road, because of that straight at the end. Here's another one. I believe this is 100 MRA, but TDR didn't have the stats for this, so I'm just going to put NA. But it is the new king of the hill at 48.41. Remains that way because it beats out the Peugeot 207 S2000. But the new king of the hill is now going to be the Hyundai Veloster. So RQ70, you're going to want to use a Hyundai Veloster NTCR. Has an MRA score of 93.88 with a time of 48.39. Now your next winner is going to be the Infiniti Emerge E, but isn't much of a winner, you tell me, because it draws with the Hyundai Veloster N. So by right, I think you're going to prefer using the Hyundai because you get to save one RQ, but you get the same results, you get the same time, right? So it's all about that little bargain. Sometimes one RQ can make or break a race. Moving on to RQ72 is the Ford Mustang GTR of a time of 48.36. A lot of slick tire cars from now onwards. A lot of slick tire motorsport cars. We got the Citroen CLE, and then we have, the picture disappeared, but it's the BMW M1 Pro car. 100 MRA, 47.96 is the time. We've got the Ford Mustang FR500 GT, which is the next best car at 47.54. For some reason, that BMW photo just doesn't want to show up, huh? And then we've got the Mazda 254 at a time of 47.58. Now, this loses to the Ford Mustang, so you want to use the Mustang, okay? That's going to be better. That 75 is going to beat this 76 and every other 76 that's on the table as well. Now, moving on to RQ77, if we move, why is it not moving? There it is. The Alpha 155 V6, the X Legendary Prize Car 100 MRA, has a time of 47.28, and it beats out the best of 78, which breaks my heart because I love the best of 78. It is indeed the Porsche. Okay, well, it looks like all my photos are deleting themselves now, so I'm going to refresh the page so we get to see everything again. Okay, we're back. Gotta love that Blossom bias. If you take away the photo for the BMW, I won't care. You take away the photo from my Porsche, I'm gonna be mad. So I refreshed the page with the Porsche back. Yeah, time of 47.36. So it does lose to the Alpha 155, which sucks because I love this car. I want to see it win. But it is what it is. Hey, at least it's the only one that has performance tires here. Everything else that we've seen is slick tires. And of course, the best epic that you can use is the Jetta G50. MRA of 91.13, time of 47.06. So again, the golden circle goes to the Jetta G50, and everything here is basically slick tires. Literally everything. There are only 2 cars with performance tires on this list, and I honestly, congrats to both of them for even making it here. The Porsche 911 GT3 Touring, the 992, as well as the Infiniti Emerge E. These are the only 2 performance tire cars that make it on the list, and that's because they handle well. So, when you look at it, Forest Road, it kind of not celebrates, but it rewards cars, epics that just get over 100 handling, or close to it. But it isn't the most twisty track set ever, because none of these winners are like Caterhams or Lotuses or anything like that, because you need the MRA as well. A lot of these cars have like 100 MRA or close to it, 90 MRA, high 80s. So yeah, that's one thing to consider about the Forest Road. It is something that requires a little bit of everything. Needs a car that handles, needs a car of MRA. 0 to 60, not that big of a deal, but yeah, there you go. But then again, it's not great if you're just an outright dragster, because none of the winners here are Charger Hellcats either, right? So yeah, very interesting track set. Moving on, Legendaries. So RQ80, I'll go through the Legendaries pretty quickly because there's a lot of Legendaries to go through. Mazda RX-7 is the best one here, 46.93. Then we have the Mazda 6 Sky Active D with the Dodge Viper TA. Always good to see a Dodge Viper or any kind of Dodge. Cadillac CTS-V is the best 83. Also was the best 83 for the fast circuit. I remember that. Alpha TZ3 Corsa is the best 84, but do take note that the 83 Cadillac CTS still the better option to use. Also, look at all the MRA numbers for these cars. I don't think anything dips below 93. I think everything is like 94 and above. BMW M3 GTR, this might be the lowest MRA count that we will see for the rest of the video. Don't quote me on it, but I think it might be the lowest one, 94.12, and then we've got 90. Okay, this is the lowest one that we're gonna see. The Dodge Viper SRT10 ACRX, but it is the best 86. 4604, and it does beat out the M3 GTR. Okay, 90.78. I think that's the lowest. That's the lowest that we're going to see. So I think from here on out, it's probably going to be like 95 plus. McLaren 12C GT3, 100 MRA, right? 4581. We've got the AMG SLS GT3, 110 MRA. Then we've got the Brabham BT63. I still hate this car. I know it was the best RQ89 for the fast circuit, and it's the best RQ89 for the Forest Road. I still hate this car. 110 MRA though. 28108. And then we've got 106 MRA 720S GT3 beating out the Brabham. Thank the Lord. We've got the Cadillac ATS VR with 99 MRA, but it doesn't beat the McLaren. So the McLaren is a little better car to use. And that's huge because the McLaren is a non-prize, but the ATS-V is a prize car. Best of the 92s. We've got two winners for RQ92. They're at the same time, 4516. They both have 100 MRA flat, and there's going to be the Chevrolet Corvette C8R as well as the Audi R8 LMS. But obviously the big photo is going to go to my American boy because, you know, bias. Anyway, then we've got the Porsche 911 RSR, 98 MRA, 4509, beating out both the Corvette and the Audi R8 respectively. But then this loses to the BMW M8 GTA. Once again, no MRA time for this car on TDR, but I do believe it's like 108 or something if I remember correctly. But then again, 108 is a number that I saw like when this came out as a prize car like 6 years ago. This is one of those prize cars where I really wanted but never got, which kind of broke my heart, I guess. It was the first prize car of 2020. I really wanted this, but my garage just wasn't good enough. But yeah, MRA, we don't know what it is, but it has a time 4491, sorry, and it beats out the best of RQ95, it beats out the Nissan GTR, and it ties with the best of RQ96 and then Aston Martin Vulcan. So both the Vulcan and the M8 GT, they've got the same time, 4491, very impressive stuff. And then this is where I kind of got lazy. Like I said, when it comes to the Legendaries, there's just way too much RQ to work with. We go from RQ 80 all the way to RQ 119. They're like 40 RQs in between this rarity alone. I'm not going to go through every single one. And honestly, at this point, most of us watching are not going to have these cars anyway. And if we do, we don't really care. Like, honestly speaking, I have a lot of these cars and I just know that I have the power, you know? So this is just for funsies. These are the rest of the cars from RQ97 to 111. So best RQ97 is the BT62 Brabham. Best RQ98, Porsche GT2 Club Tour 25. Best RQ100, because I feel like my camera is probably blocking that one, the Peugeot 905B. The best time to see here is going to be that Volkswagen IDR. The Volkswagen IDR is the car that you want. It has a time of 42.61, the best car in the game for Forest Road, even beating out the Audi R18. Peugeot T16, nowhere to be found. It has the same time, I believe, as the Audi R18 at 42.80. So technically the T16 is better than the Audi R18 because they have the same time, but the Peugeot is 1 RQ cheaper. But that being said, if you want to use an RQ10, 110, I guess, use the Volkswagen IDR Pikes Peak. I also got even more lazy because there's a gap between RQ106 and RQ110. There was just some cars where I just didn't even bother putting in. Those cars were the Automobili Pininfarinas, the Zenvo Aurora Agile, and like I think it was like a Koenigsegg Yamera or something like that. No, not the Yamera. Yamera is also 106 RQ. So yeah, it was like the Batistas and the Agile, and I was like, you know what, I don't care, because like honestly speaking, like those Batistas, they're not going to be beating the IDR or the R18 or even the Rimac E-Runner. I think the Batistas had a time of like a very high 43 or a low 44, something like that. It was irrelevant to me, but yeah. Anyway, guys, that's going to be it. So that's your little cheat sheet of legendary winners for the Forest Road. I honestly think that when it comes to this series, the legendaries are just there for the pizzazz. I feel like the real nitty gritty happens between the rares and the epics. Those are the winners that people really want to know about. The legendaries, I mean, how many of us are going to have these things fully upgraded anyway? Like, how many of us are going to watch this video and be like, oh yes, so today I've learned that, you know, for example, the McLaren 12C GT3 is the best legendary for RQ87. I'm going to go max it out now. How many of us can actually say that? Because I can't even say that myself. So, yeah. Anyway, guys, that's going to be it for today. Those are all your winners for the Forest Road, or at least most of them. I didn't include RQ 107 to 109. Oh no. But anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. Remember to stay safe, wash your hands, and blossom out. Peace.
Bro, this song just makes me so happy.
Me too.
Imagine being Asian in the 50s, looking nifty, leather jacket, looking sleek, look like Presley, look so deadly. Got a jukebox back at home, feeling jazzy, turn it on and play it slow, like the movies with the ladies.
They so fine.
Imagine being Asian in the 50s, looking nifty, leather jacket, looking sleek, look like Presley, look so deadly. Got a jukebox back at home, feeling jazzy, turn it on and play it slow, like the movies with the ladies.
They so fine.
Sit back, relax in my Bonneville.